Hi, I'm Lady Essie. You're watching AILTV.
The next question from Mr. A. Green. Does any panelist or guest know of any organizations involved in connecting the diaspora and globally? And if not, is there a need?
So can you repeat that, Liz?
Does anyone know of any organizations that are currently involved in connecting the diaspora globally? And if not, is there a need?
Andy?
Well, our organisation, I can say that we do connect. How do we connect? So we recognised in 2003, after myself and my husband reconnected with the motherland, that it was very important that we promote and try to mobilise and galvanise our people to visit the continent. Because we recognised that there was a need for us, those of us that are here in the diaspora, to support the continent to restore itself to its former greatness, because we know the impact of colonialism. And we know that Africa, everybody needs Africa. Everybody else benefits and appreciates the resources and the minerals that are produced on the continent. However, myself being one that was born here, I didn't know how beautiful my continent was. So once I found out, I felt that we had a duty to promote that back here. So we started organizing trips to the Gambia. We started in the Gambia because it was recommended, and it's a small part of the continent. So we currently do that through our trips.
Hello.
And also those trips led us to also contribute and support education and health. So we've got a charity as well in the Gambia, and that charity benefits other countries on the continent. And I don't actually see the continent as separate countries. I see it as one land mass, because I know how it became to be divided. So I feel that we do that, our organization on many levels. We connect those in the diaspora back to the continent.
Yeah, there are many organisations, and I think we need to connect with the organisations that are, even just to take a trip back to Africa. What we have to recognise now more than anything else, with everybody poisoning the planet, Africa is the most resourceful land mass. Everybody else is going there. So it's just like now, the only place you'd probably be able to survive is on Africa, when all the food supplies, all the diseases take place. The safest place is going to be the most nutritious part of the planet. So, but even by necessity, we have to make that connection to Africa.
I think that on a global level, you've got lots and lots of organisations, you really have. I mean, if you look at the whole Pan-African movement, it's been there for many years. So you have got lots of organisations that are connecting. But my main interest is, quite recently, I spent quite a lot of time in Barbados. And Barbados, the government of Barbados is making a really big push to connect the Caribbean, the whole CARICOM, with ECOWAS and Africa. They've recently had the president of Ghana there, they've had Kenya there, they're doing trips to Rwanda, and they're recognising that you have to physically, it's not just about, you have to physically connect, you have to physically take yourself to Africa, and people from living in Africa have to come to the Caribbean, because there is no other way that you can truly say that you become connected. And I think that that's what we all need to look at, because even if we think about Europe as we stand right now, if we think about the whole Brexit scenario, and I really hate to mention that word, what I'm really amazed about, with everything that's happened, you still have people of African origin having no connection with the Caribbean or Africa. Everybody else is trying to find a safe zone, let me get out of here, but yet a lot of our people are still, I don't know, they still seem to have this delusion that Europe is their home. So I think that is because people don't actually recognise the wealth that's there. They don't recognise there's a place there for them. And just like Sister Angie, I spent a lot of time living in Senegal, and the Gambia, because my husband was from Senegal. So we actually physically went there, lived there, worked there. So we got a real understanding of what it's like. It wasn't just a picture. You really got to connect with the community, and likewise living in the Caribbean. So they're very similar, but they're also very different. But you need to have your own personal, lifelong experience. There isn't no shortcut really, because we always talk to people. I know you do big trips there, and we spend a lot of time in the Gambia, lots and lots. We spend about 4 months a year there, because we've got a house there and family and everything else. But there is no way you can share your experience with someone who hasn't visited Africa. It's something that everybody used to make that journey for themselves. And we encourage people all the time, and it's really essential that we educate our children. The young people need to understand there is a place for them, because a lot of people don't feel they have a place. So yes, we do need to connect at all levels.
Kwame, yeah, in regards to the question that was asked, they're correct. The connection between the Caribbean and Africa is getting stronger. So I can talk in terms of being in Jamaica, because that's where I'm from, in that regard. And even recently, when the Kenyan president came to Jamaica, he actually started to give visa waivers to Jamaicans to go to Kenya, and the same thing for Ghana. So we now can travel to Africa on that basis for free, so to speak. Right, so the connections are getting stronger for the Jamaican diaspora, so to speak, out of the African diaspora on the whole. There's a lot of movement that takes place. So, for example, there's a young group called Bridgen, which is made up of British Jamaicans who tend to go to Jamaica every year. They tend to have a good time, but they also do a lot of charity work. There's also a Jamaica Diaspora Conference, which takes place every 2 years, and I think there's one that's going to happen here in Sheffield in June. So there's a lot of movement in regards to the invigorating and getting the energy back in terms of the Jamaican diaspora and making that connection with Africa, as happened recently. So even though it may not seem that something is not happening, there's something happening, and it's moving pretty quickly.
Can you get the moderator to ask the first, Letitia?
Yes,
what
was the name?
Letitia?
Letitia, you want to come back on because we went to Letitia, you want to come back on the question that you asked in terms of what the panelists said. You want to come back on your question? No, it's fine. Okay, you're happy with everything? Mr. Green, you want to come back on the question in terms of the organisations and what they're doing in terms of the reconnection? You want to come back on what was said? What's your opinion on it?
One important thing is that for those people that are actively involved in Reconnecting the Diaspora, that you give the name of your organisation so that people can hear it and in some way connect with what you're doing. And just to say that the reason why I posed that question is because I need to get a feel for whether there were names that were commonplace in connecting the diaspora globally. And it seems like there's a great need for that initiative to happen. And so, out of what's been said, there seems to be a little bit of a dire need for organisations that operate globally in bringing the diaspora together. That's it.
Thank you very much. Mr. Green there. Angie, you want to come back there?
Yeah, I'd just like to also, while I was listening to your response, brother, to say that, apart from Gambia, there are people that do trips to Ghana that I know in my circuit, Zimbabwe, Tanzania, so there is that rippling effect taking place, and there are more events taking place as well, connecting those of us here that have been organising trips to the continent. So, you can get more information.
Kwame, you want to?
Yeah, I'm going to follow up on Sister Angie, actually. There's a Sister Toyin, I forgot her name, but she's a part of a group called Afford. And they tend to do a lot of events in terms of African diaspora events, which so they're like a leader in terms of seminars and workshops around connecting and reconnecting with African diaspora. So Sister Toyin.
Yeah, that's also true, because we did Sonny and I, we worked together for years and years, and when we did we actually cover Afford in a radio program.
Yeah, we did.
And they worked with the British trading industry, and there were lots of investors there from the UK, and they had an initiative which was encouraging those based here, especially for investment in Western Africa at the time. So Afford has been doing some work for quite a few years now in terms of connecting diaspora people for investment.
But, sorry Buzzy, but the thing is, the trips and the tours are really great, but you know what? There was a stage where my friend, let's say, came from Jamaica or whatever, and you would actually invite people to come into your home and go into the families, you know, and actually, in some ways, we can still do that.
Yes.
You know, we can still have an open door policy to invite our friends to come and have an experience. You know, the first time when I went to visit places in Europe or places in South America, or whatever it was because somebody I knew lived there personally invited me. And I think that's one of the areas we as African people, because we're living in outside of living in the diaspora, we kind of have forgotten our manners really, because in Africa, one of the things, the hospitality is something that is part and parcel of the whole of Africa, no matter how poor you are. It's got nothing to do with how much money you've got. You know, you invite people into your homes. So I think that basic level is something that we could start to reintroduce into our community, really, because the friendship thing, I know that you have, the friendship thing is crucial. It's absolutely crucial.
I think in response to Sister, one of the things I think initially what happens, what I love about the group trips is that it's introducing people into the continent. And I think most people, because of the television and the media, what they promote about Africa, people don't want to go on their own. So why the group trips are important, it's an introduction, but what happens after that introduction, you tend to find people do connect. And because we do things locally anyway for our tours, so you're interacting with the local community. So it's a great extension. I think that's where you go to once you've had that initial introduction.
Yes, yeah. Things are really heating up here, and the audiences really want to get a little take back on, because obviously hearing you speaking and so dynamically, the audience really is urging to just have a little come back or a little say on what's going on as part of the proceedings. So I can see Jama's a little bit nervous now. You want to say one thing on that? Yeah, go ahead before we go to the audience.
Yeah. There's another way of connecting as well. It's connecting the consciousness and connecting the spirituality. I've got a group of friends who actually using the language as a vehicle, what has been in Latin, whatever's been constructed, to take us away from who we really are. So what we do, we run a speakers club, and we actually looking at the language in a different way, in which way we can actually consciously connect back to the motherland, which is the motherland is the creation of our communication. For instance, I'll just briefly give, once our youngsters know the letter A, when you reverse it the other way around, they teach it in school that it comes from Greek. So we disassociate ourselves from anything to do with, and language is communication. Once you know you turn the A the other way around, you see it's an ox's head, and it comes from the hieroglyph of an ox. Then you can consciously go back to where this language comes from. You can attach yourself to the language, and then you can take control of the language and redefine who you are.
I'm Juliet Macapella,
okay.
And the question was, does anybody know any organization that deals with reconnecting Africa at the diaspora? And indeed, I'm the founder of UK Africa Diaspora Forum, and the aim when we set up this was to bring the perspective of the Western and African worlds together through learning, education sharing, connecting, and helping with understanding the different ways of working. Our forum at that particular time, when the idea was really growing, was to bring the real development of Africa, Asia, Caribbean, and the UK as a nation really needs. And at that time, our passion was really, really high, so the energy level was really, really high. So it was to help to encourage the agenda on where development in Africa is needed and challenge the reflection on reality checks of communication and development to create a better world. Because I felt in myself at that time, there was no real connection, not just in Caribbean or Africa, but the need across the whole world. So it was to bring changes down to the grassroots, and the platform aims to bring real change to those who really want to help Africa's growth and the Caribbean.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you for that.
Jeanette Rosy Body Lotion makes women of color feel good, look great, and natural all the time.